First of all, just thanks for having me. I'm glad all of you took some precious time out of your weekend to join, so thank you for that. I'll dive right in because I know we only have a limited amount of time together, and I really want this to be more about you than about me. But my story is, I sort of came by this naturally. I was a, black belt daydreamer starting from a very young age, and I fell into books and fell in love with books and stories. I was sort of a little bit the boy in the bubble. My first superhero was the Scarlet Pimpernel, and my love affair with storytelling is not limited to film. It wasn't like I was a devotee and thought, oh, I'm going to grow up and be in the film business. No, it didn't matter whether it was music or book or live stage or film. I just loved and lived for the story. In fact, when I went to UC Berkeley as an undergrad, and there, I was a terribly shy kid, but somehow I managed to screw up the courage, and I went into the admin building and said, who produces all your music concerts? And they said, we don't have such a position. I said, well, how about you do now? And so I became the head of music for the campus, and I got to produce all the small cabarets and the big 3,000 seat venue concerts, bringing in the poet laureates like Joni Mitchell, big artists of the day. Did some A&R for Columbia Records, the big label back then. So it's really not so much the form, except that I realized I just wanted to do something in the world of stories. So the left turn that I took was when you come out of UC Berkeley as a hippie back in the day, and all you really love is music, and like your choice was go into academia or save the world, whatever that looked like. There wasn't the word entrepreneur. You went to work for a corporation. No one wanted to do that. So I, being a romantic, decided I was going to become a criminal defense attorney. I had discovered a foundation out in the ghetto of San Francisco. We could spend hours on it. It's such a delicious chapter of my life. So I went and I did that for a year before law school, and then during and after law school, and it was there like 125 people to mend the fabric of this community. So it wasn't just legal defense in lieu of the public defender. It was drug counseling and job skills training and all kinds of services. And it was a beautiful period, but it was not well suited to me. I did it because I love the idea of the courtroom as theater. And if you don't tell a truly persuasive story, there are real high stakes here. So you have to be darn good at what you do. And that somehow appealed to me. But again, it was a very harsh world. It wasn't a romantic world. And so I ran away to be in the less harsh realm of storytelling, which is LA, it's filmmaking. And back then, I didn't know I wasn't prescient. I didn't have a crystal ball, so I couldn't see into the future and know that the small screen was going to become like the coolest thing ever. Very diverse and back then there was a lot of snobbery. Film and TV were very separate worlds, and film looked down on TV, et cetera. So I went into filmmaking. Features were my thing, and I started out. I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I knew how to represent people by name. It was just reflexive for me. So I became a lit manager. There really weren't literary managers back then. Managers were for actors people in front of the camera. But I said, no, I want to work with writers and directors. So I did that for a dozen years, loved it. The first several years, I did nothing but scrape my knee and bloody my nose and take myself to school. But eventually you figure it out, and I got really good. I actually figured out some systemic tactical mindset things that broke people into the business. So, J.F. Lawton, who wrote Pretty Woman Under Siege, and Matt Reeves, his next film coming out he's writer, director, producer of the next Batman film. He's done the last couple of films in the Planet of the Apes franchise. These are monster films. But he also does the series Away on Netflix. He did Felicity way back in the day with J.J. Abrams. A lot of my clients have gone on to these really extraordinary careers. So as a manager, I just love discovering and launching fabulous people who had the talent, just no resume, and no one knew them. So I did that for a time. And then the writers went on strike in the late 80s, and I took that as opportunity. And I went to one of my clients to dust off one of your college scripts. I'm going to raise a couple of $100,000 or whatever I can raise, $17, I don't know. And we'll go make a movie. And I know you don't know a darn thing about directing, but you've always wanted to. And that's how much I know about producing, but I've always wanted to. So, you know, let's be the goofballs who go out and make every mistake known to man, and we'll somehow survive it. And we did. We made a film called Cannibal Women in the Avocado Jungle of Death. You know, sort of a spoof comedy. I hate to say because he's going to turn in his grave, but it was loosely based on Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And, you know, we had Bill Maher and Shannon Tweed and Adrienne Barbeau, but we literally were Dumb and Dumber, and we bumped into every wall you can bump into. And eventually we finished the film. We made a film for $200K, but this is before you had great tech that made it cheap. Like, we actually shot on film an entire feature, edited on Steambacks, the whole deal for $200,000. So, but the point is, I got the bug. That was it. I understood for myself, that was the next great challenge. Like, I did not want to any longer be solely limited to representing people. I kind of wanted to step it up and become someone who actually created these projects and brought the teams together, held the vision, and you know, it's still working with people in the same sort of energetic field, but doing a very different set of functions and seeing films getting made. And that's kind of how I broke in on micro budget films. I did several, you know, what I consider low to no budget films, and then you graduate, and you know, the game back then was you matriculate till you're at the studio level. And, you know, once I did that, my first studio film was Pretty Woman. Obviously, that did well enough that it opened a lot of doors, and that became what I did. And, you know, it was a very different time back then. There were all the major studios, there were mini majors, there was a robust independent cinema of, you know, like more than 24, maybe 30 companies, the Vestrons, the Hemdales, the people bringing us Dirty Dancing and Platoon and Salvador, and like amazing, the Weinstein Company back then. Many companies, New Line, on and on and on. And so we as creatives, whether you were a writer, producer, editor, actor, it didn't matter. We all had lots to do because development was big. One of the biggest sea changes between then and now is then every studio was developing 300 to 400 projects simultaneously and paying people a lot of money to do it. And you could earn a living just developing projects, even if you didn't get them made. That's obviously not the case. Today, you want to go in with a really sort of a polished script and hopefully an attachment. So it's a very different, and there's strategies to make both eminently possible, but that's the difference, or one of the differences. Anyway, so I just got, I was very blessed. I got this film up, I got the early script 3000 that became Pretty Woman into Sundance. It got some notoriety. That was part of my strategy. How do I get noticed? And the rest sort of unfolded from there. So I think that's more than enough about me. I'm really here for you guys and to answer some questions. And, I know that there are differences between the US and the UK markets, but fundamentally, a lot of what works, the tactics, the strategies, the landscape it's different players, different individuals, but a lot of the strategies are identical. So what I'd love to do is just invite you, throw it open and say, let's ask me whatever. What questions do you have? What intrigues you? What are your challenges? How can I help shed some light?
Okay, well, I've got some questions that I've got lined up. I've got more after hearing you speak, Gary, I've got to be honest. But I don't want this to be a dialogue between me and Gary. So has anybody got a question they'd like to ask?
I do.
Is that Sandra?
Hi, Gary. Hi, Wayne. Thanks for this great opportunity. My name is Sandra. I didn't introduce myself because I had to, settle in a little bit.
No worries.
Just a little, like, I'm not from the UK, not from the US. So I'm in that spot where I'm writing in English. I kind of tried to get involved when I was living in London to different productions. I spent some time in New York. I managed to get like an unpaid internship for 3 months with a production company, and I never got anywhere. So my frustration comes from the fact I don't know what the game is. You mentioned that in the earlier days, probably in the US, you got a studio job and a mailroom assistant level, and then you work your way up. I did try it in London. It didn't seem to work. Then I figured after a few years, it has nothing to do with writing. So maybe I just should leave it and just focus on honing the craft, get that down. I mean, you can always improve. What am I doing now? Let's say I have a solid script. Obviously, it's not, like the next Christopher Nolan movie, but like something that is not that bad. Where do I go? How do I get in touch with anyone that will take the time to even have a look?
All right. So thank you, Sandra. You go the same place you always went. Always. And you don't need, this is an equal opportunity game. So the truth of the matter is that it is incumbent on each of us to care enough about our career and not see it as a hobby. Like if you're really determined to succeed, you've got to have a certain rigor, a certain discipline, a certain willingness to be step outside your comfort zone. Representatives can only do so much for you. The thing that matters is the artist. In fact, what matters much more than your script, because most writers, their strategy is sending out blind query letters or something like that. It's a terrible strategy because most people don't respond to them. We are human beings, bottom line. And we like to be approached in a certain way and do things with people that we know, like, and trust, that we care about, that we've developed some real rapport with. So what I always did, I'll tell you how I built my career. It's really simple. And I did it every day I had a rigor. That discipline, that daily regimen was 20 to 30 minutes a day. And that's all I believe anyone has to invest if they really want a career. And within 6-12 months, you're going to completely transform your landscape. And what do you do with 20 to 30 minutes? Well, I would at night research who are the people that I want to know and that I want to know me. Simple. And most people focus only on producers and agents. They're sending a script unknown to the recipient as a human. They're sending a script to an agent saying, will you represent me? And the writer has no idea what a massive ask that is. And it only becomes a larger ask because they don't even know who you are. Like some strangers sending me 100 and some odd pages, and they want me to work for free for years to build value and put them in the game. Same with a producer. Will you produce oh my God, a huge ask. So it is sort of taken as the norm, but is it really the most effective way to open the door? So all I did was I would decide who are yes, I would include agents, I would include producers, but I didn't limit it to that. Who are the casting directors? Who are the editors? Who are the writers? Who are the cinematographers? Who are the actors? Who are the C-suite executives and the low-lying creative exec? Who are the people that I really feel are a right-sized fit for me? And I did that for each of my clients. I literally couldn't have more than 15 clients. And the reason was because I put in half an hour for myself and a half hour for each of my clients every single day. And that's why so many flowers bloom, so many careers just took off. It's little baby steps every day. So if I put in half an hour for that many people, I can only work so many hours a day. That determined the max number of clients I could have. And in each case, the list was different. It never looked like a cookie cutter. I would research who are the perfect people that need to know about Sandra, not only you as a human, but the signature, your creative DNA, like what drives you, your backstory, all of that. And I would figure out who are the right matches for you. And it wasn't always linear. Like I said, it wasn't just agents and producers. I might think she needs to know the people responsible for making this film. It's so aligned with what she does. Let her begin to get in there and get known to all of these people. Again, cinematographers, casting directors, producers, all sorts of people as mentors, and then develop rapport. So that when you, before you need them, you develop a rapport. Then when you want them to look at a script, they already know you. And even then, you don't have to just the first thing call them up and say, well, here's a script. You have a conversation. Can I pick your brain? Will you be my 3-minute mentor right now? I have 2 questions. It would mean the world to me if you would answer them, because my project is so down the white stripe of your body of work and what you do. And I so admire you. So I just need the voice of experience. I got a couple of questions, and that always say yes, every 100%. You start to do that. They get curious about your project because you've referenced it. I know this because I've been on the other end of this all the time. And I was like, wait a minute, what am I, chopped liver? You're not going to share your script with me? But I reverse the energy every time. I'm doing exactly what 100% of the people out there are not doing. 100% of the people out there are sending blind query letters. They're not in the game. Because what's interesting is, who created this? No one's ever going to produce, let alone finance or option or buy or whatever, your script without meeting you. Well, why not start with that? Right? You can't be invisible. Every one of you is a miracle, is unique, is different. It's like there's a backstory that's like so freaking amazing. You may take your story for granted, but I guarantee it's not to be taken for granted. And what people in this business want is they live on a steady diet of hope and expectation that they're going to discover the next great personality, the next great voice, the next great storyteller, the next great project. That's never changed, and it's not going to change. It's been true since the dawn of mankind. And I don't give a damn how many devices you got or how much technology changes or what AI does to our lives. That's not going to change. The format will change. The form will change. It already has. But our deep desire for storytelling and the storytellers of our culture and our time, that's not going away. It's important to be a human being and be the artist. And like, I share my story with you very superficially today. Does it give you a little bit more a sense of, oh gosh, you know, you could take a step closer, or you're curious, or you have some questions, or, you know, I mean, yes, it does for all of us always. I will tell you this, the extent to which you can be brazen and courageous and bold and reach out to strangers on a consistent basis, that form of generosity will pay dividends like you can't even imagine rapidly. So when I'm talking about, you know, like I made my clients do it with me. You know, they've got to be in the game with me. I'm not just going to be your manager back then, right? We're going to earn every day our relationship anew. So you're going to work really hard as a writer. I'm going to work really hard as a manager, but we're going to collaborate and you're going to learn. I'm going to teach you so you don't need me. I'm going to make myself obsolete as soon as possible. So I would teach them, here's how you research. And it's simple today. We have the internet. Back then we didn't, right? Then it was really hard, actually. But today it's so simple. Like, you can make a list of the TV shows, the films that are similar to your, let's say, start with, instead of you and your career, just narrow in on your current project. What are the projects that are really like aligned, spiritually akin? Like, this is, if you admire them, they are followed down the white, you know, that genre or whatever it is. They're within a similar sort of budget range. Okay, fine. You identify that handful of projects from the last few years, not from 20 years ago, right? But when I make a list of that, and I do this for every project, I make columns. Who was the producer? Who was the writer? Who was, you know, the executive? Who was the cinematographer, the DP, the script consultant? I'll find anybody that I can and get their contact info as much as I can. Because what I want to do is I want to reach out to some of these brilliant people who were like literally living in the epicenter of this experience. And they know everybody. They know the talent, they know the studio executives or the streamer executives or whoever it might be. They know the producers and and the actors, that's what happens when you make a movie. And they also have a perspective on it. So how cool is it to be able to call the editor or the cinematographer and like have a real, because you are genuinely curious and you are palms up. It's like with humility, it's like, holy crap, look what you did. Can I have a few minutes of your time? It would mean everything. I have never had someone say no. I've had people be too busy in that moment and ask, can we talk another time? But if you approach them in this simple human way, it works. Well, now you've got people who can refer you, because if you want to get to X producer, go through the cinematographer as one example, right? It's not a rule. I mean, if someone comes to me, it's my assistant or a cinematographer or someone I've worked with in the past as a writer, whatever it might be, the likelihood of an immediate yes, because of the faith and credibility and just the rapport that we have, it's almost a given. Now, the other thing I'll tell you is when you make that list, you research, you make a list. This is a long answer, but it's important. When you make that list, you're not going to talk to the name on the door every time. Like if you're calling in a cinematographer, or a production designer, or a casting, you might. But most people don't think to call these people. So they're not getting a lot of calls and they're much more receptive and they're less busy and they, their office is not as chaotic. So that's great. But if you're going after producers and agents and this and that, where like their inbox and their meeting schedule, it's like insane, right? So what about those people? Well, you don't want to meet them. If you're going after, whoever it is, I mean, we can fill in any big name, right? I'll give you an example. I wanted to meet Steven Spielberg. I was young, I was new to the business. It's not because I was arrogant. I just like, wow, there were a lot of people on my list like that. How am I going to do that? Well, I befriended a guy who was an assistant at Amblin back in the day. And we became friendly over the phone. I never met him. It took me months, before we met, but I met him over the phone and we just hit it off. And I'd ask him like, how'd you get that gig? Good Lord. And where do you want to go? Do you want to be a producer? Is there, because it's not always a given that if they work for a producer, they want to be a producer. It's not linear that way. So you ask. Anyway, I got to know this guy. We became friendly over the phone. I'd always keep the call short. I'd always make him laugh at least once. And I would say, I've used up my time. Mitch, you have a great day. Goodbye. And it just got into a rhythm. I'd call him at least once every other week, even if I had nothing, no business. Long story short, he got promoted from assistant to creative executives, still the low rung, entry level, very low. And I called him one day and I said, Mitch, I've never asked you to read a script, but here's the deal. I've got this special care, it's young characters. It's very tender. It's beautifully written. It's a delicate film. I'm going to send it. I want you to read it. He read it. He calls me back. He says, oh my God, this is absolutely gorgeous. Took him back in terms of his emotional memory to being that age and some stuff that happened. So he was really quite enthused. And I said, great. So you can have Steven read it? He said, no, I think it's a pass. And I said, you just praised it to the heavens. Why would you pass on it? He said, because honestly, it's too small for Steven. I said, really? Well, there's a really good chance you're right. But what if you're not? And by the way, if you put it in Steven's briefcase for his weekend read, and Steven read it, and he passed on it because of what you just said, it was too small, would you have any cause for shame, embarrassment, or would it put your career in jeopardy? He said, absolutely not. It's such a beautiful piece of writing. I said, great. You just answered the question. The question is, are you going to put it in Steven's briefcase? And you just told me yes. So do it. And he went, you know what? You're right. And he put it in the briefcase. Steven read it. Steven fell in love with it. Back then, when Steven liked something, both Universal and Warner's competed against one another their business affairs machines cranked up, the gears turned, and they made offers against one another. Anyway, long story short, that's the germane part of the story. I was a guppy. I had no credits on my resume. My clients were equally new. Water saw at its own level at the time. We were all guppies. And I had 2 major studios bidding on a project with Steven Spielberg as my purported producing partner. Full stop. Like even today thinking back on it, like that's preposterous, that's stupid. But that's how it works. If you have the trust and the rapport and the connection with anybody inside that operation, whether it's a small boutique or a big studio or a streamer or whatever, if you find your way to an assistant, because when I hired my assistants, they had 100% trust. If they came to me and said, I met someone cool, I think they're talented, would you read? The answer was yes. And by the way, my assistants, how vetted are people at the entry level in this business? Everybody wants to be in this business. Guess what? One of my assistants became the co-head of literary at Creative Artists Agency, the biggest agency in the world. One of them is partnered in, she and her partner are only have 160 credits as casting. That's one of the top casting companies in film and TV in the States, et cetera, et cetera. I could go, and that's true across the board. Entry-level people are the bullet train. That's it. You don't need to talk to God, although God's fun to talk to. There are so many ways to fast track yourself that no one else is doing. They don't think about it. It never occurred to them. No one's teaching them this. In fact, most people teach craft, not career. And the few who touch on career are, well, yeah, I'll editorialize. They're giving really bad guidance. They're telling you how to write a better query letter. Pew! That's just years of frustration being added to whatever you've already experienced. It's not good. So, Sandra, that was the longest answer I've ever given to a question.
It was also very inspirational, Gary. I really, yeah, terrific.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Gary, can I just add on to that? That was obviously inspiring because it's told me where I've been going wrong for so long. But what sort of body of work would you say that a writer should have before he tries to make, or he or she tries to make those contacts? Do you need a substantial body of work, or would you do that for a script or 2 scripts? Or?
I don't care if you've got 1,000. Well, if you got 1,000 scripts, you better not advertise that, because that's not a good sign. That's not like a fresh discovery. That's like, oh my God, I discovered the bones of a former, from a former era. No, the answer is very simple, Kevin. Like, I don't care if you've got no script, 1 script, or 6 scripts. When I met J.F. Lawton, he had 7 scripts sitting in a stack in his 1-room studio apartment in a bad part of Hollywood. He was a film school dropout. No one, he confessed, he said, not a single human's ever read any one of my 7 scripts. It's like, okay. But would it have mattered if it were 1 or 3 or 20? Probably not. I was connected to him, not the number of scripts he'd read. I don't give a crap. If he'd come to me and said, I'm in film school, I'm writing my first script, I haven't completed it, it wouldn't really have, it would have changed the timing. I would have taken an interest, and then I'd say, as soon as your script's ready, let me know. This is not, you got to stop thinking about any reason not to do what I'm saying, because most of you will. You'll look for reasons not to get out of your comfort zone and reach out to people who actually, believe it or not, want to know you. People have all these stories and reasons why not, why they can't, why it hasn't happened. Well, not interested. Time is precious, life is precious. Your desires and dreams are real, and they should be made real. You need to have rapport with people before you need them. I will say that again and again and again. You come to me with urgency and you have a big ask of me and I don't know you. Oh gosh, that only happens multiple times a day, every single day. You want to stand out? Be generous, be a human being, make this a humane enterprise. Most of the people on the other side, they're not fire-breathing monsters carrying machetes, just waiting for their next kill. That's not Hollywood. And it's not the UK. That's not humanity. Think about it. The people who, like, how crazy is this? There's this huge population of people who had this idea. I want to go into this world that's about story. What does that tell you about them as a general rule? I mean, not everybody's in a great disposition every single day of their lives. Okay, some are busy some days, okay. But overall, these are very smart, very ambitious people who are generally pretty well educated, who are looking, the whole business turns on this group right here. You don't write scripts, the wheels of the machine fall off, we can all go home, stand in a bread line. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so you don't earn the right to reach out to a human being because you have a metric, a certain number of scripts completed. It's irrelevant. You go with honesty, you go with radical honesty and vulnerability and like genuineness. Like, I'm reaching out to you because here's what people don't do in a blind query letter. They never tell you that, I mean, most blind query letters, not all, but 99 point whatever percent, it's a log line and a description. Basically, will you read it? Can I submit it? I'll sign a release form or not. That's what it is, time and time and time again. And the answer is no. Generally, no. It's not like we aren't already reading too many scripts because of our quest. I care about who is the artist, who's the voice, who's the energy behind this. Because I learned so much about a project because of that. Out of all the stories that are possible, out of everything that you could fit inside your imagination, which is limitless, you chose this. I want to know why. And not one person in 100 generally will comment on that. They won't put themselves in the frame. Oh no, you don't get to see me. I'm going to hide over here. But what if you didn't? What if you said, hey, look, my name's Gary, and I shared one factoid about my life that makes that's surprising or different or unique. It may or may not have anything to do with creativity or my life, my career choice. It's just like something, you want to give them something, a nugget, memorable. What can you say about yourself that's like kind of, it could even be funny, self-deprecating, or just a fact. Never bragging, even if it's a cool thing, right? The way you phrase it is not a brag. So you tell them that in the first sentence. In the second sentence, what do you tell them? How are you connected to this project? Keeping your sentences as short as a writer can possibly keep them. And you just tell them, you know, the truth. Like, I chose this story. This is, it's part of my life experience, or I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but why are you connected to this project? And the third sentence should be, why you? Nobody ever thinks to say, why you? It seems almost like a factory thing, this blind query thing. It's let's crank them out. It's a numbers game. No, it's not a numbers game. It's actually the opposite. You've been taught wrong. So you say, listen, I haven't shown this much, but because of your body of work, or because of this particular film, or because I researched your life and I learned this about you, There's a reason why you are my chosen recipient. You make a conscious statement that honors, you know, the interaction, the energy, your desire to have contact with them. Now you've set the table, and now you can tell them a log line in this, sure. But maybe it's not even about submitting the script. Maybe it's not quite as clear as log line and description. Maybe there's a paragraph about the project, but then you say, but look, I know you're busy and we don't know each other, and I'm not going to ask you to read the script right away. But I do have a couple of questions. And I would love to just have a, 3-minute, I used to say, I need 3.7 minutes of your time. And then on the call, I would literally, and I would say, you know what? I've used up 3.8. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'll tell you what, I have more questions. I want to think about it. I'm going to call you a week from today. And if you have available 5 to 7 minutes, we can expand our relationship. But, I've taken up enough of your time. I really appreciate you. You've been amazing. Short, memorable, sweet, always happy, not asking huge favors of the other right out of the gate the first time or even the second call. Once you've talked to a human being 3 times within a span of a month, they actually think they know you. That's how the brain works. These are the human technologies that I'm talking about are so fundamental, so simple, so easy. You just got to put it all together in the right way. So it's about being intentional. And with you invest 20, 30 minutes a day in your quest, in yourself. In a matter of months, you won't recognize your landscape. In a year, you'll be shocked. If you are horrible at what I'm describing, if you are like the worst ever, you're going to succeed by accident 1 out of 10 times.
That's good to know.
So let's go with that math. You're really just like, forget getting into the Hall of Fame. You're booted out of the dugout or whatever the sport is. Okay, I'm not a big sports guy, whatever. You're basically a disaster. And yet you succeed 1 out of 10 times. And if you're calling 2 people a day, and that doesn't take 20 or 30 minutes, that takes 5 to 10 minutes. You're going to call a couple of people a day because you've made this top 100, what I call the top 100 list. Well, and you've prioritized it. Okay. So I'm going to call these 2 people. I'm going to call Krista and Ben. And I do that every day, 5 days a week. So that's 10 people a week, right? And I failed 90% of the time. So I've started to develop a rapport with 1 person. That's 4 a month that I've started to create rapport with. I don't need to continue expanding the math. I think you get the picture. You think about how many insiders, whether it's in the US or UK, doesn't matter. We no longer live in a physical world. We don't. It's ridiculous. I can be anywhere. I just have to stay awake to suit your time zone. But honestly, we don't. It's not about that. That's not a dependency. All right. So in the last year, how many people on either side of the pond that are really insiders in this business, who are employed, who are making a living on the inside of the film and television sandbox, do you feel that you've created meaningful rapport with in just the last 12 months? And, if that number is anywhere near what I think it should be, I'd be really happy for you. But in my view, you should have a few dozen insiders every year coming online with you. If you fail miserably, you're going to get a few a month. Let's say it's only 3. You're really terrible. 3, and let's say there's only 10 months in the year because someone changed the calendar. You've already got 30 new people in your life who are on the inside of the business. Guess what? Their currency is talking about the new talent they've met, meaning people like you. The talent and the projects of the talent. They talk about you behind your back. That's a good thing, right? Now what happens? Oh gosh, my assistant moves on. She goes to UTA or she goes to CA or she goes wherever she goes. Well, if you knew my assistant, when that person moves, and they do every 18 to 24 months, they move, that's the deal. You not only go with them, but a natural consequence is, and you're going to ask, and she's going to offer, or he's going to offer, you're going to meet their replacement. You just doubled your Rolodex every time someone moves. I mean, for God's sakes, in a couple of years, you're really honestly talking about close to 100 people in your life who are on the inside of the business, which, by the way, it seems like a huge number, but it's not. But it is, if you're talking about strategic influence, importance, the advancement of your career. Because I know for a fact from representing people, if I even got them to the point where they had 24 people, 20 people, meaningful, well-chosen, thoughtful people who showed up on our mutual strategic list, our top 100 list for that person, if they had 20 of those, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm going to say it. To me, it meant their success was inevitable. The hardest work was now done. Now they just have to be good at their craft and keep getting better. Because the habit was formed, the die has been cast, and they're in the game. Okay, that's another really, God, I'm going to annoy myself. That was a really, talk about killing the answer.
I think it was all relevant, Gary. I think Ben was trying to make a comment. Ben, do you want to?
Oh yeah, Gary. Thank you so much for being here. It is so inspiring. It really is, and thank you, Wayne, as well for organising all this. Yeah, obviously I could listen to you all evening, but I was just going to say something which I don't know may help a few others too. But something I did recently was I approached an investor, and they said, "Can you send me a log line?" So I said, sure. So I sent them a log line. They said, oh, this sounds good. Can you send me a pitch deck? So I said, of course. So I sent them a pitch. I didn't know how to do a pitch deck, but I taught myself how to do one. So right. I sent them a pitch deck. And then they said, can we have a Zoom? So I said, yeah, of course, yeah. So we had a Zoom, and they're now very interested in the film, and they want to get involved. And so they said, can you send a script? When it's done. And this is someone I met via Clubhouse. I don't know if you guys will know,
love Clubhouse.
Right. And it's a fantastic platform, absolutely fantastic platform. And all I did is I approached somebody and spoke to them, and I'm now sort of getting the script finished and send it off to them. And so, and I've done that with a few other people. So it's just, such a wonderful thing to be able to take it into our own hands and make these connections and talk to people. It's such an inspiring, in many ways, it's never been better in that sense. As you said, Gary, like the world is, everyone's virtual and remote, so we can make these contacts with people. And I really, anything's possible. The other thing that I had to become aware of was, so sorry, I'm taking up too much time, but the budgetary sort of requirements. So I had to educate myself about what the budget was going to look like, how it was going to look, and then when she said to me, "How much do you need to make this film?" the figure just came out of my mouth straight away. I didn't even have to, sort of question it. She said, "That's fine. I'll talk to my, my business partner," and that was it. So, I guess all I'm trying to share here is just that it is like anything's possible, and that as Gary said so brilliantly, far better than I've put it, how that when you make a human connect, people by people, and they want to invest in you as a person, and so anyway, I just wanted to say that, but I'm so grateful to have this space, and thank you for being here.
And that's awesome, thank you. And yeah, this works on everybody, with everybody. And it's not a conceit. It's not dastardly. It's just humanity at its best. It's doing your business as a true creative, right? And being vulnerable and open and forthright and sincere, and generous and all that stuff. You know, and I love two comments about that. One is that natural thing that happened when the investor said, "Can I see a log line?" I mean, think about how gradually the ask got bigger. Now, normally I architect that. In this case, it just happened to Ben. It was asked of Ben. But think about it. How little time does it take someone to look at a log line? The next, a pitch deck. It takes a few more minutes, but just a few more minutes. The next thing, it could be any, I mean, I can go any different direction. It could be send me the financials or whatever. It could be eventually send me the script. But the script didn't come first. There were all these baby steps where when they ended the call, and Zoom was another form of upgrade, right? A little bit more time, a little bit more intimacy, great, fabulous. That preceded the script. So when you're asking people to take another step closer to, invite them to take another step closer to you, you're doing it by asking favors that take almost no time. My goal for the first 3 calls is I never ask for something unless I know when they hang up the phone, there's nothing left for them to do. Like, that's how little time it takes, right? And you grow that. But the other comment that I would make is, this is such a beautiful time for us to be doing what we're doing. Ever since the demise, I talked about this earlier, the demise of all those independents that were many of us had the joy of being able to break into the business and make a living. And if a film failed at the big level, you could take it downgrade to the indies, or if it got a lot of heat at the indie level, you could springboard into the majors. It was like, that was really interesting. Well, those days are gone, but guess what? They've been replaced by a bigger opportunity. I mean, there's like at least 23 significant streaming services, some of whom we all know, the Hulus and the Primes and Netflix and all the Apple and all that stuff. But there's a couple of dozen that are really meaningful and worth being mindful of. The Rokus and on and on and on. FX. So why are they relevant? Because honestly, no one has in the history of humankind has spent this kind of money creating content. The amount of series, the amount of films, the amount of content of all, and by the way, diversity of content, limited series, documentaries. I mean, just like suddenly I'm a documentary buff. I couldn't find documentaries 10 years ago. You had to look under rocks. Now they're everywhere because you have to feed these diverse appetites if you want to keep subscribers. We're no longer in the ad business. We're in the subscriber business, right? So the number of TV series and films is crazy. Hulu is spending $3 billion this year on content. Amazon's spending $6 billion. Netflix is spending $20 billion this year alone on content, about $4 billion more than they spent last year. And this is not a short-term trend. This isn't going away. Riddhi, you're on mute.
Yes, sorry. Hi, thank you again. Thank you so much, Gary and Bain. This has been very insightful and inspiring. So basically, I am an Indian screenwriter. I moved to London very recently. One struggle that I have always felt as a writer is trying to juggle between, doing something that pays money and then doing something that's your passion, which is writing scripts. The whole process of pitching and trying to meet people and trying to get the show greenlit and people interested in your project can be really long. So my struggle has always been to try and stay afloat, during this time and do something that sort of pays as well. And one of the ways that I have recently tried doing this is try to work as a journalist. So do you think it sort of helps to diversify a little, do these other jobs like journalism or working at an agent's office, to sort of that could help you get more access, or should it be that we should be focused on on writing the scripts and then reaching out, and that sort of a
Got it.
better route?
Okay, the answer is really simple. If you can get if you can find a perch, a base of gaining experience and developing relationships inside the mothership, inside the creative sandbox, do it. It's aligned, it furthers you, it deepens your understanding of the business. It makes you a more interesting conversation or collaborator. You develop rapport, not just with whoever you're working for, but the people down the hall. You get access that you didn't have before, and you're paying your rent. But it's aligned with where you want to go, right? So, journalism is closer than most jobs.
Yeah.
If you get, let's say it's a production company or an agency or a management firm, whatever, if you can do that, that's even closer, or it doesn't get any closer, that is it. So if you can get one of those kinds of gigs that support helps you sustain, I would recommend it, because it's really like, I love creatives who get a, sort of deeper, they're more deeply anchored in terms of their understanding of the business and what the roles are and who does what. So yeah, I mean, I would say absolutely don't, some people think, oh, I don't want to work there. Because I just want to be a creative. No, that's really naive. The more you know about the business, and you should never stop learning about every facet of the business, it's what we do. The more you understand what other people's roles are, what they really do, the more you'll appreciate them and grow rapport with them, and they'll appreciate you for your just your lack of selfishness. Like, you're not being other focused is like the coolest thing. It's a super weapon. Yeah. You weaponize generosity.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would absolutely encourage you, to snuggle up as close as you can.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
I have a question if there's time.
Krista, sure. Yeah, if you don't mind. All right, is everybody okay? Because I want to talk to you a little bit about the masterclass that I'm doing.
Sure.
10 minutes, whatever. But I want to answer your questions. So
okay.
I'll
make it quick.
I'm good time-wise if you are. So
okay.
Jump in, Krista, please.
Okay, so I was a lowly production assistant on a couple of major motion films, and there's a lot of downtime on set. So the exec producer assistants and I would hang out, and they asked if I had a script. They would be more than happy to read it, and I couldn't believe how easy it was. But that's when you're with these people, you're getting coffee with these people, you're working with them 12 hours a day. But now, especially for these people who live in England, that's not a big movie making space as compared to something like LA. So for me, I feel like you have to have that face-to-face working with people, even if you are just a production assistant, to get to that point where you can say, hey, do you have a moment? I really respect you, and this is what I think. Or are you saying that we need to like digitally find their emails, find their numbers, and cold call them and things like that?
I'm saying I always opt, COVID or no COVID. I always opt for the most personal form of communication. I am not a fan of email.
Yeah. I
definitely say, no to social media. It's not that I'm not on social media. I reluctantly, except for Clubhouse. I actually love Clubhouse. But it's totally impersonal when you send an email.
Right.
A text is crossing a line. Right. So what are the options? Look, as far as I'm concerned, voice it's the reason I love Clubhouse. Voice is very personal. It's very revealing. You can communicate your personality just with the melody of who you are. You can be gracious. You can be funny. These are things that you really can't do effectively or reliably in other media. You can't do it in social. You can't do it in email. You can't type it. But my goal is to elevate I want you to stand out. I don't want you to be like everybody else. So my attitude is, I don't care if you're not in active production right now, if the UK is shut down or LA is shut down. It doesn't change anything for me. I still want to connect with humans, and I do that. And what I want to do is I want to start with voice. So it's a phone call. And if they're not there, I leave a message, just like ordinary, right? If I can get it, quickly, by the third or whatever, it's like, let's hop on a Zoom. I'd love to see you, meet you. Cool. Okay, fine. Sometimes that's hard to do when you're being spontaneous, but later on, a few calls in, several interactions in, not so hard to do. You can do that. You can say, hey, after I've talked with you, Krista, several times, we feel like we know each other. And it's like, okay, look, you know what, next Tuesday at 2 o'clock, let's do a 15-minute Zoom or 10-minute Zoom, whatever. You don't have to take an hour of their life. So I think that the most personal form of communication is always the shortcut. It's always the most desired path, and be very intentional about it. A lot of people, I think, like the blind query letter because it checks the box. Oh, I tried to do something for my career, even though it's a zero-sum game. It's kind of delusional. It's okay if you rewrite a query like no one's ever written a query and you understand how to do that, and it's only and it's not the lead tactic, it's not the only arrow in your quiver. But even so, it's like calling me, oh yes, much better. Calling my assistant, brilliant. 1,000-fold better than any other, a letter, email, whatever. Blah, blah. So yeah, I mean, but when you're hanging out, production is amazing because you're hanging out in a sustained, consistent way. So you're basically doing everything that I said, just at a much deeper level, because you're doing it every day with the same people. Mm-hmm. By the end, you're having them over for Thanksgiving. You're doing it when their hair is let down, right? Because, and you're put together in this sort of,
family.
I would say pressurized environment, but I don't mean pressure in a bad way. I mean, it's actually a good thing, right? You're brought so intimately together to create something that you're all excited about. The vibe is not an office vibe. It's a very different vibe. So that's beautiful if and when you can do it. But by the way, one of the things that you can do, COVID, no COVID, absolutely up to you guys. And the greatest thing that someone can do for their career is go out and make a short. I don't care what hat you wear. Let's say you're a writer and you don't want to direct, or you don't want to be the producer. That's great. You don't know how to handle a camera. Great. There's a million ways to find talent, and it's not geography dependent. They're everywhere. There's platforms online where you can just go find the greatest people and their bio and even reviews and crazy stuff, right? So you can find them online, you can find them at local film schools, you can find them at a lot of places. You be the one, whoever is the first to raise their hand and say, hey, I have a project you want on board. Whoever says that, they're going to get attacked with love. They're going to be overwhelmed by the level of response. You can say, hey, I'm just the writer, but here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a great producer, great line producer, great cinematographer, someone who's good with the camera. I'm looking for, it's not a ton of people. It's less than 10 people, easily, including a couple of actors, whatever. You're gonna get a stampede, and your job is to vet them and talk to them and get to them. So what are we doing there? Deepening your network. These are people, I promise you, that you will have enduring relationship with for the rest of your career. You make one short film with someone, you're going to know them for the rest of your professional life. That's just how it is. And the short that you produce collectively is a calling card that I can't even put a value on it, how big that is, because very few are courageous enough to do it. Don't think they have permission to do it. And if I could share with you a list, I actually wrote an article years ago on all the amazing careers that were launched off of a single short film. And most of those are household names, but there are there are literally countless careers of people, you may not know their name, but they have incredible careers. Same thing, off a short. So I don't care if it's Tim Burton or Steven Spielberg, or, I mean, Chris Nolan, Wes Anderson, the list is literally too long to get into. Some of them were in black and white. Some of them didn't even have dialogue. It's incredible. I would say, and there's a certain self-pride, a certain level of confidence that comes from going through an experience like that, right? I mean, there's a million reasons to do it. And it's easier to do than I think most people imagine. As long as you don't have big exploding bridges in your short script. So anyway, Krista, did I answer your question?
I think so. I think you're right that face-to-face is always better. And I think the phone call is best too. I think it's ideal too. I just did a documentary and I had the writer of Sons of Anarchy reach out to me and say he thought it was great. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how is this happening? I think anything that you can do to get out there is the way to do it.
Yeah, beautiful.
So thank you.
Really good to hear that. Yeah, thank you. Anyone else?
Can I just give a very short remark, Gary, on what you said? Just reiterating this, like, honestly, like, I love these ideas, but I really struggle with first of all, I don't feel like I can get access to any phone numbers to begin with. Yeah, maybe an assistant somewhere, but like, what would I tell that assistant that would pique that assistant's interest if it's not talking about my project? Because the assistant is not, I cannot connect an assistant to a movie that I've seen and I was impressed by. So I'm kind of struggling to find an opening thing that you can use when you make
Sandra,
these.
you're overthinking this.
Probably.
And you're trying to intellectualize and say what you're not capable of. And I that's okay. We all do that. But stop it.
Okay.
I mean, you're talking to another human being who, guess what? They are aspirational. They are young. They are ambitious. They're an assistant. They're answering the phone. You're telling me you don't know how to talk to them? You talk to people all the time, every day of your life. I think you do. I challenge the statement that you wouldn't know what to say. I think it's because you haven't done it, and it's a little, there's sort of it's like you think picking up that call is the game. It's not. It's a tiny blade of grass in a field that is your life. Don't put that much importance on it, number one. Do not live your life like it's a report card and you're going to grade yourself because you are just a horribly mean teacher and you're going to give yourself an F more than you're going to give yourself an A. You're going to fail more than pass, which is nonsense. You're just unnecessarily beating up on yourself because you know how to do that. But the truth is, you call up an assistant and you say, I'm fairly new to the business. I'm the turnip that fell off the truck recently. And I'm a writer. And listen, I'm calling because, and then you fill in the blank and it's the truth. Why are you calling that number? And for me, the reason is usually, like I've just watched a film or a TV series or something that they did, and it sucker punched me in the third eye. Like literally, I didn't see it coming, but it was just such a beautiful experience watching how the story unfolded the cinematography, the performance, like and it reminds me of what I truly deeply want for the project I'm currently writing. The level of just creative brilliance. Or it could be something else. I'm just like playing here, right? You can say whatever you want to say. But then I'll quickly turn it around and say, that's enough about me. Listen, first of all, I really admire the company you work for, but how the heck did you get that? There were probably 50, 100 people in line ahead of you. Why do you get that job? I mean, you must be awesome. And you're working in an agency. Do you want to be an agent? You're working in a production company. Do you want to be a producer? Like, I ask those questions. I do. I ask other facing questions because I actually do want to know, number one. And number two, people like telling you about themselves. And guess what? Assistants are the, it's not glamorous. These people are doing it because they want to learn the business from the inside out. They want to get their foot in the door. Let's face it, they're abused, they're overworked, they're underpaid, they're brown bagging it, they're reading way too many scripts every night in the weekend, they're on call 24/7. This is not glamorous. And they're highly vetted because it's a very competitive world. Everybody wants in. So when you're talking to an assistant, you damn well better understand there's a certain level of respect you got to give these people. And when I go on LinkedIn, which is like one of my favorite platforms ever, because I actually learn a lot about these people. When I talk to an assistant, one of the first things I says, I'm sorry, I don't mean disrespect, but I don't know your name. And I make sure I get their last name, because the first thing I'm going to do is go look them up. Because on the second call, I want to find that bridge, that connective tissue. I'm going to find something surprising that either intrigues me or that we have in common or whatever it is. I'm going to show that I cared enough to spend 2 minutes online. And it works magic. But that first call, I'm not telling you exactly what to say, Sandra, but I know that the answer to your for you is just say what's true. I mean, here, it could, what could be true? It could be you're calling someone, they answer the phone and you say, my name's Sandra. I'm a writer. I'm early in my professional career. And I really want to talk to you. And I have a question, but you know what? I'm sorry. I am so nervous. I'm stuttering because I'm really that nervous calling you. I'm so sorry. Normally I'm better than this, but I have a question. Or I'm curious about your company because I've been so consistently inspired by the films or the series or whatever it is that you do. Or, I've just admired this person who's one of the principals of your company. Whatever it is. I know you know how to talk to people. You're an adult. You've been doing it your whole life.
Yes, of course. I know. I feel like I know so many people. I feel like I just can never make anything out of it. Like I have these, like a lot of great people, not necessarily only in the film industry, but I do actually know even producers in the film industry. I never dare to ask them for anything because somehow I think, well, they are doing this all the time and they are so busy and there's so much, like people that are already in the industry that they need to deal with on a daily basis and, out in and out of sets. Why would they bother with someone that?
Oh, well, you've got an airtight story why you shouldn't get in the game. Is any of that true? Have you found that to be actually true? I doubt it, because I am a producer. And guess what? No matter how, and I am busy all the time. I'm busy 7 days a week. I am. It's just what I do. Because after this, I got to go meet someone who's a film producer who's going off to New Mexico to shoot a film on Monday, and I got to meet him before he goes. I work. I do this. This is what I do, and I love it. And I have stuff outside of film and TV because if there's a gap, I'm going to fill it. Nature abhors a vacuum for me. But does any of that have anything to do with, am I open and available to creatives who might have a great project? Because that's an important part of one bullet point in my job description that is not at the bottom of the list. It's near the top. So you can have all the stories about how busy I am, or all producers are, or all people in the business are. You can keep yourself in the corner and a secret, but I think that's just being safe, because I know the story is not true. I mean, look at the number of films and series that are getting made today, and documentaries and alternative content. The amount of stuff that's being made today is so exponentially logarithmically greater than ever in the history of film and television. So how did that happen? Reverse engineer that for me. Was that because no one came forward with their projects? No, it's because strangers met strangers, hit it off, got excited mutually about a project, and took it forward and built it. It's no different than what Ben was describing. It didn't just happen. It's not, spontaneous combustion. It's a human thing. You got to let yourself, you got to be generous with yourself. You got to let people know you. You've got to extend an invitation, and it's not necessarily an invitation to read your script right away. Sure. It's just like, it should be so non-threatening. And if it's really awkward, if you're really uncomfortable the first few times, and I promise most people will be, here's what's going to happen. I can also promise this, because I've done this hundreds of times. I've coached people through it, and they come out 2 weeks later going, oh my God, why didn't you tell me that was not only easy, but it's fun? I did. You weren't ready to hear it. People need to know you. That's what this business turns. It's like any industry, really, except that we're dealing in IP, which is even more alluring. It's like that mystique, that mystery of, is this the person who's got the story that I'm going to fall in love with? If I told you how I met people, I mean, it's crazy. You can't predict where the next great project's coming from. Anywho,
Thank you.
I don't know if that really answers your question. I'm sorry if that sounds a little bit like I don't mean to, it's a loving slap.
No. I totally get it, and that's why I said thank you, because sometimes that's what you need. and I'm thinking, all these really annoyingly, like beautifully annoyingly coincidental moments. Like I'm sitting on a bench randomly in a park, a person sits down next to me in London. So I'm thinking, definitely not a British person, because there were other 3 benches. He must be American. He starts talking, turns out he's a producer out of all the people, yeah? And actually looked him up. We went to the theater together, we stayed in touch, and that's how far it has gotten. I never see, like, it happens to me all the time. I just never seem to be able to do anything with it. But I don't want to take up, I'm sorry, everyone.
Okay, but time out, and then we'll move on. But Sandra, I'm gonna step across the line and make a wild guess.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess that you didn't put out a proper invitation. I'm gonna guess that you had a very lovely rapport, but you never expressed this, like, would you be my mentor? Because I have this amazing project. I've been pouring my creative DNA into it, and I think it's really unique. But I don't know how to get it across. I don't know how to get it into the hands of those who might be the right people. And if you were me, what could you? You don't have to ask him to read your script. You just have to put the invitation out there. Let him be your mentor. You're asking the very question that's going to make him take a step forward. When I want to raise money, I might go to Wayne and say, hey, Wayne, you know, I've got this extraordinary project. Here are the people involved, blah, 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 blah. I'm raising X amount of money. Do you know anyone who might be a good fit for this? What have I just done? You know, it's like, no, Wayne, you're not, I'm not asking you. I just want to know who you have in your Rolodex that might be a good fit for me. And he's like, oh, I'm going to be left out in the cold. Wait a minute. Why can't I see that opportunity for myself? That's exactly the vacuum you want to fill when you're with that, you know, you have that relationship, that rapport with that producer. It's like, ask him, and because it's a totally heartfelt, sincere, honest question. There's no BS around it. It's real. But let him step into the void, either with amazing advice or I'd like to see it myself. Sometimes you just got to step across the line, put yourself out there, be bold enough to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all good, Sandra.
Thank you.
You know, this experience called life is definitely a journey. It's an experience, an unfolding, and it's layered, and it takes time. But and quite frankly, you know, look, all of us know that what success looks like in action, whether it's your career, your life, your friendships, whatever it is, it's not taught. I didn't learn any of this stuff in school. I didn't learn financial literacy in school. There's a ton of stuff I didn't learn in school. And by the way, it was only all the important stuff that I didn't learn in school.
That's a fascinating way of putting it, Gary. I hadn't thought of it like that. That is really interesting. Yeah.
It's, you know, we have an industrial age educational platform. And I think I can say that with confidence about the UK and many other jurisdictions, not just the US. The US is like antiquated. And it's so difficult to witness it. And that's why people are going to these charter schools and private schools and trying to get the heck out of where they're going to actually get hands-on reality. But you know, and that's why I'll talk about the masterclass now for a few minutes, because this is exactly why I did this. I actually love creatives. You know, it's like I represented them and I've been producing them. Yeah, I still get most excited about discovering a great new talent. And that's just never going to change. But I also see that creatives can be they're not only not educated, they're miseducated. They're taught really poor habits. Focus on your craft, focus on your craft, focus on your craft. What? Really? If you were in any other industry, you'd be dead, you'd be bankrupt. Number one. And number two, they're taught it's about, you know, so it's about the script. It's not about you. You stay out of the picture and say things like, if only I had an agent. It's the worst line a writer can utter. Because again, it distances you from your truth, from success. It's just not healthy. A representative is a great thing down the line when you're already, you know, like you're leading the charge, you're the CEO, you're like, and there's a team energy, not a dependency. It's very unhealthy to have anyone distance you from the people that you need to know. They can't stand between you and broker it. It's not real. But they can open doors that you can walk through once you already know how to do that. And you can have a strategic conversation with them that really is appropriate to you and where you want to go. anyway, people are taught or mistaught or not taught, whatever. And I see really great talents and a lot of great projects just sort of evaporate. You know, they chew their head off in a drawer because no one knew how to champion them. And anyway, long story short, 7 years ago, I wrote a book, Conquering Hollywood, the Screenwriters Blueprint for Career Success, that was really nothing about craft, because there's a gazillion teachers teaching craft. And I'm probably not really all that great at it. I mean, I'm really great at reading a script and pulling it apart and putting it back together. And I mean, that's one of my superpowers, but teaching it is different. And I'm not great at it. I think I'm not great at it because I don't enjoy it. I don't like, But what I love is teaching career. And like that which is manifestly doable, it's measurable, it's real, and it moves careers forward. And that's the stuff that I learned being a lit agent, being an attorney, being, you know, whatever all those things are that I've done. So anyway, I wrote this book. It's all the mindset and tactics that consistently launched the careers that I referenced earlier. Recently, in the last year and a half, 2 years, I created a masterclass. It's basically 8 modules, because here's what would happen. People would read the book, they go, this is amazing. No one's ever talked to me like this. I've never heard this stuff. It's game changing. And more than half the time, people would finish that conversation, that lovely piece of conversation by saying, now what do I do? And it was like, oh gosh, I just wrote this whole book. Okay. But what I realized is, no, they're absolutely right. So I created a masterclass that basically are these 8 modules, very interactive workbooks. It's 8 videos, 8 exercise-driven modules, et cetera. And by the time you complete the 8 modules, you have such a customized, unique, an action plan, if you will, that's unique to you, because every one of you is different. You don't do the same thing. You don't want to go the same place. So the masterclass is basically that, plus I like working very intimately. So I don't do group coaching, I do individual. So the masterclass is basically this 8-week deep dive. And you do a module a week. And each week we're going to get on a call and work together. So it's, you know, it's not something I'm doing in big numbers. It's very selective. You know, and honestly, I created it because you know, looking back, it's like, have you ever in the quiet moments thought to yourself, wow, I thought I'd be further ahead by now, right? Well, I know I did. I had that thought many times over the course of my career. But when I decided to move to a new city and get into the film business, and my friends all thought I was crazy, I really didn't know what I was getting into. And it took a lot of time, and I made lots of mistakes. But, you know, because of the choice that I made, I actually forced myself to learn how to overcome all this stuff and how to navigate my way for my clients and for myself separately. So anyway, the masterclass is really my solution to that. So you know how to target and make powerful industry connections, pitch until your presentation is literally bulletproof, you know, co-create a smart marketing plan for your career, but also for your individual project. Basically sort of transition or transform your story and screenwriting skills into a success in the marketplace. And I've just seen it happen again and again and again. So I know what's possible, so that you get noticed in Hollywood. It doesn't matter if you're not in LA, has no bearing on it. But you need to know how to market yourself in a way that convinces these key gatekeepers to invest in you and in your projects on a human level. So anyway, that's, you know, there's the 8 modules. There's this one-on-one weekly coaching with me, which is really sort of, I don't know, the PhD portion of the masterclass, where we just work one-on-one. And I'm doing it because I see a marketplace that's never been more, it's like this global sized sponge that has to soak up such an extraordinary amount of content. And I'm like, wow, the next handful of years, this is when we should all be in the game. This is our opportunity. So much so that I'm, yes, I'm developing some features, but I've never been a series producer, but I'm developing a TV series. I mean, it's like there's so much opportunity right now. So that's the, I'm not going to go deep into it. That's really the masterclass is just everything I know drilled down into very actionable, doable, but not, I don't want it to be time consuming. By the end of the 8 weeks, you should already have X number of beginning relationships with people inside the business. And it's going to vary for each of you, whether it's on that side of the pond, this side of the pond, TV versus film, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about that. It's about the fact that you will have developed the musculature. You will have, we co-create your sort of target marketing list, who you want to know, the materials, the pitch, the written and verbal pitch. And we deep dive on all this stuff. And by the end of the 8 weeks, you will have anchored yourself in a new set of habits. It'll be already demonstrated in the way of having some results. And I think it's going to change forever, like your whole trajectory, your mindset, how you approach this business. I mean, what I can do in an hour call is, I mean, it's an hour, it's very little. And every single thing that we've been talking about needs to get, like there's a lot beneath the hood. So it just needs to get anchored. It needs to become, I need to work with you in a way where it becomes reflexive. You understand it so deeply, you've done it enough that it's second nature now. You've changed habits, you've unlearned and relearned and blah, blah, blah. So that you can, you can become a pitching ninja. You can walk into and win a room. You know how to, you can be confident, you can be prepared, you can create a personal brand log line that sort of nails your unique POV, your perspective, and your personality as a creative, as a screenwriter, whatever you are. You come away knowing, how am I going to walk into a room and really honestly discuss my portfolio, my career goals, my writing style with, let's say, a potential agent or manager? Like it's water off your back. How am I going to connect with industry insiders? What's going to be my unique way of doing that, using the sort of tactics that we've been alluding to today? And, how do I decide who's a right fit for me? Like, what's the shortest distance from A to B? So, because, look, we all know relationship building and marketing are the second rail that has to parallel all the energy, all the time that you invest honing your story, your scripts, your pitches. Because one without the other, in my view, is, it's closer to hobby than career on a sliding scale. And I think that when you put them together and you're willing to put in 20 minutes a day, 5 days a week, doing certain kinds of activities, it completely obliterates what you knew as standard behavior in the entertainment industry. So anyway, that's the whole point of the 8-week masterclass, is to close that gap, to instill absolutely these new ways of thinking and talking to people, and including, by the way, talking to yourself. And so anyway, that's it. That's, they're all things that I do, that I did, and I just had to sort of deconstruct or reverse engineer or whatever it is. What were the things consistently that launched these really disparate careers, starting with myself, but including all these other people in film and TV from ground zero? Like, what really took place along that journey? And that's what the masterclass is. It's just you, me, and a masterclass. And, a bunch of others. So there's a bunch of other things that I'll throw at you, buyer mandate breakdown, like what are the streamers each? They're very different. You got to, you know, what is each one looking to be and to buy? What kinds of content, what kind of projects? There's a bunch of stuff that I'll throw in a webinar on, you know, protecting yourself in terms of copyright and writing partnerships, and a million things about how to protect your intellectual property, not just via copyright, but as a practical working reality in the business. Anyway, so that's it. I'm doing this on it's an 8-week masterclass experience. We'll work together. We'll be on the call every week for 8 weeks. And it's, you know, I can only take on a couple of clients at a time because it's very time consuming, but it's also a joy. And you know, it takes me a lot of time to put together like the creative notes that's going to see the script improve over the 8 weeks, that's going to see the marketing plan not only be enacted, but we have just enough time to really start to see results. So it's a little bit intensive. So I don't take on a lot of people. That's it. If you're curious, and I should tell you, just so you're not gobsmacked later, it's in the US, it's $3,000, $2,997, call it $3,000. I don't know. I don't speak sterling, so I don't know what that looks like. I get that out of Australia too. It's like, I don't know what your dollar is. It's different. But anyway, so that's it. Anyone who's interested, Wayne has my email and contact info, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that. And if there's any concluding questions or whatever, I am.
Just on so if anybody is interested, I can pass on Gary's details for you. Gary, you said it's an 8-week course. How often does that refresh? Do you take, is it every 8-week blocks, or do you take time out? Do you do it 4 times a year, or?
Well, when I don't want to do it, I don't offer it. So, I mean, there are chunks of the year, like if I go into production on something, I'm probably not going to do it.
Right.
Okay. You know, if I know that I have a certain travel at a certain time, I'll probably do it so that I'm either going to finish before I leave or start it when I come back. But basically, it's very individual. So, you know, if it were Wayne Parsons, I'd say pull out your calendar. Let's figure this out. When are you ready to go now? How soon are you ready to go? Let me see, and we'll plot it so that we have very specific beginning and end dates, and it will happen. You know, what I really like to do is I don't like stress. I don't like friction. I like things very easy. I believe in rapid transformation. I believe in ease. I don't believe in like making things harder than they need to be and struggling and all that. So generally it's like we pick a start date, and then on the anniversary every 7 days, that same day, that same time, we're going to get on a Zoom. And in 8 weeks, we're going to get to the promised land. And so that we know we have a predictability about the process. It's not random in any way.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about the masterclass? Okay. All right. Well, again, if you're interested, get in touch. Yeah, that's terrific. Thank you very much, Gary.